not sure why, but for some reason, every time I post a video, no matter the topic, I'm asked about my stance on AI. Every video, every live stream, and daily in my inboxes. And as always, I'm not here to ruffle feathers, but unfortunately, no matter what I say or how I say it, some of you aren't going to agree. And that's fine. But as with all mature arguments made online, I hold respect for those who can see both sides of a coin. It's a sign of maturity to be able to say, while I don't agree, I have actively heard you out and can see why you have the belief that you hold. I just don't share that belief. And most often, when it comes to disputes of this level, it's important to surface facts, recent science, and predictions by experts of the field. So today, I'm choosing not to share my personal opinion until the very end. I'm strictly stating facts about AI-generated art. And while you may not like everything that you're about to hear, it's important that you at least hear it. It's important that we not cover our ears and ignore what is ugly in exchange for only seeing the innocent side that we like. When most people picture AI art, they picture something that is weightless. A few words typed into a box, a pretty picture comes out, you get some cool pixels, a little dopamine boost, then it disappears into the internet like it never existed. But that picture doesn't actually disappear, and it was never weightless in the first place. AI-generated images are created by computers that live somewhere real. They live in towns. They live next to neighborhoods. They live in buildings. And those buildings are full of servers. Those servers pull electricity from your power grid. They dump heat, and to keep them from overheating, they often require cooling systems that use real water. This is the first fact that a lot of people don't know, and it's the one that I want you to keep in your mind for the entire video. Data must exist somewhere. It's not magic. It's not just in the cloud. It's industrial infrastructure built on land, tied into utilities, and paid for by someone. Sometimes it's paid for by the companies that built it, but usually, and what many are seeing right now, the cost spills into the community around it. Sometimes it becomes a tug of war between what a county is promised and what residents actually experience once the buildings go up. If you've experienced a recent and unexplained spike in power costs, it may be worth checking where the closest data center is from your home. Data centers are usually placed where a few things line up: cheap or available land, access to high voltage power, massive fiber internet routes, friendly zoning, tax incentives, proximity to the big pipelines that move data. And the reason you keep hearing the same locations pop up is because once a region becomes a hub, it tends to attract more hubs. Essentially, data centers attract more data centers, and the ecosystem builds on itself. That's why places like Northern Virginia are famously dense with them. It's been nicknamed Data Center Alley for a reason. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, but Loudoun County has described itself as having the highest concentration of data centers in the world, with roughly 200 built and over 100 more in development. Guys, that's hundreds. Now, to be fair, the impact on a community is not one-dimensional. Some counties love data centers because of tax revenue. Some local governments benefit from them. Some residents still feel like they're living next to giant windowless warehouses that hum and drink resources and change the entire character of a town. And even if you're one of those folks who doesn't care about tech at all, here's where it becomes relevant to you: your wallet. In the United States, data centers already account for a meaningful chunk of electricity demand. In 2024, estimates put US data center electricity use at around 183 terawatt hours, which is more than 4% of the entire country's electricity consumption. And projections show that number rising sharply by the end of the decade as AI systems and the infrastructure behind them continue expanding. So when you hear people say, "It's just a fun little picture, it's not hurting anyone," you need to translate that into what it really means. It's electricity. It's heat, it's cooling, it's water, it's expansion, it's grid upgrades, it's new power plants, it's new transmission lines, it's utilities trying to guess demand 5 and 10 years ahead, and communities trying to understand what is being built around them before it's too late to have a say. In some places, there's a growing fear that regular people will end up paying for parts of that expansion through higher utility rates, because utilities don't build infrastructure for free. If a utility has to expand generation and grid capacity to serve a wave of huge new customers, as in a big giant data center, the question becomes, who carries the cost and how the rates are structured? And there are already examples of this tension. In late 2025, reporting on US power markets found wholesale electricity costs rising dramatically in areas near data center concentrations, and that those increases can filter down into what customers pay. And in some states, utilities are planning major generation expansions largely tied to data center demand growth. Supporters of AI expansion argue that those costs can be structured so that the data centers pay their fair share. But critics argue the risk that regular ratepayers get stuck holding the bag if forecasts are wrong, or if the rules allow costs to be spread broadly. So yes, this part gets complicated, but the simple version is this. Data centers can affect what it costs to live in a place. Through electricity, through infrastructure, through land use, through housing pressure, through the simple fact that once a region becomes a magnet for massive builds, everything around it changes. And housing is a real example of that. In Northern Virginia, research has found that home prices can be higher the closer a home is to a data center. Whether you view that as a benefit or a harm depends on whether you already own a home, whether you're trying to buy one, whether you're renting, and whether your area can handle the growth without pushing people out. The impact here is not zero. It's a measurable effect. Now, let's talk about the part that genuinely shocks people, which is water. And it makes sense because for most of our lives, we're told that water and electricity don't mix. Hell, I didn't even know that water cooling was a thing until back in 2016 when my husband built me my very first water-cooled PC, and my family still oohs and ahs over the fact that our computers are full of water. As you've probably guessed already, yes, many data centers use water as part of cooling systems. Not all of them. There are different cooling designs. Some rely heavily on water, some rely more on air, some use closed-loop systems. Some are dry-cooled, but in many real-world cases, water is a major part of how heat is managed, especially as the computing inside gets denser and hotter. And AI workloads are a big reason chip density and heat have become such a focused issue. AI training and AI image generation require enormous computing power. That translates into a lot of heat concentrated into a relatively small footprint. If you want a simple mental image, imagine your laptop trying to run 1,000 heavy tasks at once, non-stop for days in a room full of other laptops doing the exact same thing. Laptops get hot when they're working, and that heat has to go somewhere. The bigger the heat problem becomes, the more intense cooling needs to become, and the more resources cooling can require. And this matters even more in places that already struggle with water scarcity. There's been reporting on data centers expanding in parts of the American Southwest, including areas near Phoenix, where water stress is already a real and daily concern. In some cases, mid-sized facilities can use huge volumes of water per day for cooling, and experts have pointed out that even when the direct on-site water use is tracked, there can also be significant indirect water tied to the electricity generation that powers these buildings, which isn't always made transparent in a way that regular people can easily see. So when you ask an AI system to generate an image, you're not just asking for pixels, you're asking for computing. That computing produces heat. Cooling, that heat can require water, and the demand for that computing is rising. And if you're someone who uses AI and you're already feeling defensive, I want you to stay with me here because this is also where I extend an olive branch. I understand that AI art is not always one lazy prompt. Some people do treat it that way. Some people absolutely do type one sentence, take the first result, and then call it a day. But I'm not here to pretend that that's the only type of AI user that exists. There are people who spend hours refining outputs. There are people who iterate and curate and correct. There are are people who combine it with their own photography, their own drawing, their own editing, their own compositing, their own retouching. There are people who have developed real skill in getting consistent results and building cohesive bodies of work. And I also understand the accessibility argument, and I don't think it deserves to be mocked. For some people with disabilities, AI tools can open doors. If your hands can't hold a brush steadily, if pain limits how long you can draw, if tremors make fine motor art exhausting, if vision limitations make certain workflows difficult, there are cases where AI-assisted creation allows someone to express ideas in a way that would otherwise be inaccessible. And if you're one of those people, I'm not talking down to you, and I'm not pretending that your experience isn't real. At the same time, two things can be true. A tool can be meaningful for accessibility, and the infrastructure behind that tool can still have a real cost. A tool can involve genuine skill and still raise ethical questions about where its abilities came from. And this is where we move into the part that turns this from interesting tech into a moral problem that affects artists directly: training data. Most modern generative AI systems are trained on enormous data sets. In plain language, they learn patterns by ingesting gigantic amounts of existing content, images, text, and even music. And the reason that these systems can replicate so many styles so convincingly is because they were trained on what already exists. Have you guys noticed how good AI is getting? It's because AI is a monster that chomps away at human-created art every single day. This is one of the core ethical fractures. Traditional artists did not consent to their work being used in that training. In most cases, they were not asked, they were not paid, they were not given an easy way to opt in or opt out. And because the internet is where artists share portfolios, progress shots, educational content, and promotional work, simply existing online subjects them to their life's work being used. And many argue that if you don't want your work used, just keep it offline. But it's not that simple. Because if a piece is displayed in a gallery, we'll say, and someone photographs it and then posts it on Instagram, now it's online. If it gets reposted, if it gets scraped, if it ends up in a data set, the artist's control can evaporate. And there are major legal fights happening over this. Companies argue about fair use. Artists argue about infringement and exploitation. There are lawsuits involving image generators and large data sets. And I'm not here to pretend that I can resolve that in a YouTube video, but I can state the ethical reality that many artists are living in right now. They did not agree to be part of the machine, and even if the law eventually draws lines, the cultural damage is already here because you cannot unring a bell. You cannot ask millions of artists to undo decades of online sharing that helped them to survive and then punish them for having trusted the internet to be a portfolio instead of a quarry. Now, bringing this all back to my bedrock that is Etsy, yes, Etsy allows AI-generated items to be sold on the platform. Etsy also requires that sellers disclose in the listing description if an item was created using AI. That is Etsy's own stated position, but disclosure only matters if it happens. Because if you're selling something and you know a portion of buyers would not purchase it if they knew that it was AI generated, there's likely temptation to hide it. To tuck the disclosure where nobody reads or nobody sees it. To avoid the word AI completely. To use language that implies handmade labor when the reality is different in hopes that the buyer won't figure it out. And the reason that this matters is not because AI art can't be pretty or look cool. It matters because people do not only buy objects, they buy meaning. They buy story. They buy alignment with their morals and values. Some shoppers come to Etsy specifically because they want to support a craft. They want to support a handmade artist and the idea of a human building a human life through their skill. If you sell AI-generated art into that space without disclosure, you're taking money under false premises while asking someone to financially support something that they may not ethically support if they had been given a fair choice. And this is where my opinion starts to matter a little bit. Not on whether AI can make pretty things, because it totally can. We all have eyes. We've all seen it on our phones. We've all seen output. My focus is on the right to know. Because if you want to sell AI work, You should be able to find buyers who want AI work. You should be able to say, this is what it is, and then let people decide. And the reason that I'm so stubborn about this is because ethics without choice is just manipulation with better lighting. Lack of disclosure doesn't only harm artists and shoppers, it also feeds a culture of frivolous use where we treat AI like it's free and endless and detached from consequence. We're standing in front of a dual trash can. One side is recycle, one side is trash. The recycle might be overflowing. The opening might be annoying. You might have to take a few moments to push the bottle down or take a few moments to empty the bin to make space. And the trash side is right there. It's easy, it's fast. Sometimes it's nearly instant. So every day you're faced with that choice, not between good and evil, but between effort and convenience. And the problem with AI right now is that it has made convenience so seductive. We're starting to use it where it doesn't even matter. Not because it's essential, not because we need it to communicate, but because it saves a few minutes or makes a silly image or fills a blank space. And I want you to remember that earlier sentence. Data must exist somewhere. Every time you generate, you're using a physical system on Earth. Electricity, cooling, infrastructure, materials, water. Now, I'm not saying that no one should ever use AI. I'm not saying that you should never generate an image. I am saying the question needs to shift from can I to is this worth it? Is this prompt worth it? Is this worth the resource use? Is this worth the ethical trade? Is this worth normalizing a world where art becomes something you consume instead of something that you practice? Because practicing art does something to you. Humans have used art as communication for tens of thousands of years, as a system of record, story, identity, ritual, and as proof that we were here and that we felt something while we were here. There are cave artworks now dated to at least 51,000 years ago, showing that humans were telling stories with images long before modern civilization. Art has been stitched into religion, into myth, into community memory, into the evolution of how humans understand themselves. Art has survived empires. It's survived wars. It has survived technological revolutions. It has remained one of the most consistently human acts that we have. Art is inherently human, and art matters. Because of all the things we outsource, art is the one thing that has always remained a form of human witness. And yes, I know, AI is now integrated into work and systems. Many people use it daily. Many jobs are shifting around it. Many workflows already depend on it. The worms are out of the can, and they've grown to the size of anacondas. And as much as it sucks, we have to be realistic with ourselves and admit that they are not going back into that can. So this video is not about pretending that we can rewind the world. It's about insisting on responsibility inside the world that we actually live in. True art made by human hands is healing. There is nothing comparable to crying over a canvas when you cannot afford therapy. There is nothing comparable to being in a season of your life where you are barely holding yourself together and you put that feeling into something that you can see and hold and that proves that you made it through a day that you didn't think that you could survive. And there's something about spending weeks or months on a single piece that forces your brain to stay with itself. Those weeks are like watching your child grow from an infant to a toddler. Yes, it can be hard and stressful, but would you generate that time away if you could? Or would you savor those moments where you learned through struggle and pain and the end result was something absolutely beautiful that you created? If you never dabble in art because you think that you're not good at it, you are depriving yourself of a human tool that existed before modern medicine, before most of the things that keep us distracted from our own minds. You don't have to be a painter. You don't have to sell anything. You don't have to post it. You can make art that no one ever sees. I do it all the time and only recently started sharing because for me, my entire life, art has been extremely personal. And I worry that as a culture, we're trading that away. Not because we have to, but because it's easier not to try. Because if an image generator can give you something pretty in 10 seconds, you might never discover what it feels like to build something with your own hands over time. You might never discover that the practice is the point, that the process is what changes you. So Here's my stance, as someone who currently has fans and even students who use AI-generated images for their business. If you use AI and you love it and it helps you create and you've developed skill with it and you want to sell your work that's made with it, you should still disclose it. Because that buyer has the right to decide what they're supporting. The buyer has the right to decide what kind of world that they're participating in. The buyer has the right to decide whether they want to support handmade labor or algorithmic generation or a blend or something else entirely. And sellers deserve the same honesty in return. Artists deserve the right to decide whether they want their life's work fed into a system that they did not consent to. Unfortunately, what artists deserve versus what's actually happening doesn't align, which is why content like what I've posted today is important for general awareness and assisting in the protection of artists and their ethics. I was thinking about this last night after watching a video about an AI band topping the country music charts. And I'm gonna guess that the reason isn't because everyone who heard this hit song immediately knew that it was AI before saving it. It likely entered their ear holes, they liked it, and suddenly, before we knew it, a robot was topping charts. The argument that I'm seeing online about this AI band comes from people who say, you liked it before you realized it was AI and you were only upset when you found out, so why not just allow yourself to like it? Clearly it was a good song, so who cares? But to me, it's like feeding someone a burger that's really good and that they enjoyed, but then suddenly revealing that it was actually made with human meat. But you liked it. You were only upset when you found out that it was human meat. You would have never noticed had I not told you. No, I unknowingly consumed it and rated it on a scale of reference for what I believe that a burger should taste like. You, as the chef of the burger, violated my principles by allowing me to unknowingly consume it with the knowledge that I wouldn't have chosen it if I had known. You violated my principles with the hope that I wouldn't notice. You fed me something that I would not have chosen for myself had I known what I was supporting. I want to end this in a way that doesn't require you to agree with me. If you're pro AI, I want you to answer honestly though. Where does it live? Who pays for the power? Who pays for the cooling? Who pays for the expansion? And what does the future look like if this expansion continues at its current rate? And if you're anti-AI, I want you to answer honestly. Where does the nuance belong? Where does accessibility belong? Where do people belong who are just trying to survive and create with what they've already got? And if you're a shopper, your opinion matters the very most. I want you to answer the one question without letting anyone guilt you for it. Do you deserve to know what you're buying? If you can have this conversation without attacking each other, I want you to leave your thoughts in the comments. If you disagree, disagree like an adult. Say what you believe and why, and let other people do the same. Because it's 2026 and everywhere I go online, I only see hate and anger and disputes that don't seek solutions, but instead the desire to be correct at all cost, even if it means ignoring critical facts. But this is a topic that needs more discussion, and I'd like to create a place where hopefully we can have that discussion with the facts on the table. Until next time, Pookie.